Okay, I think we'll go ahead and make a start because I can see we've got quite a few people online there. So, welcome to the webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about manifests, and the title of the webinar, as you saw when you signed up, is your manifest fit for purpose? What we wanted to do first is just do a bit of an introduction. So, my name is David Irvine. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DGXprt. I've got over 20 years experience in environment, health and safety software and several years in dangerous goods. I'm also a certified dangerous goods consultant and a CASA approved DG instructor. And I've got Renton Parker with me today. So Renton, I'll let you introduce yourself, mate.
Yep, I'm Renton Parker, the Managing Director of Riskcon Engineering. We're a risk engineering consulting firm dealing with DGs, but then also branching out into other planning approvals and general operational requirements from a risk and safety perspective across a range of industries. Yeah, I've been doing it for over a decade.
Cheers. Thanks, Renton. In terms of a bit of a housekeeping, so all of the lines are muted. If you do have questions, we do have a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, so you can put your questions in there. We'll answer questions as we go along. If it's a bit more of a complicated question, that's fine. If we're unable to realistically answer it in the webinar, I'll come back to you after the session and answer it, but feel free to ask whatever you would like. Yeah, so I think that's sort of the admin-y type stuff. So feel free to put questions in the Q&A function and we'll keep an eye on it. And we'll get started with the webinar. So yeah, we've got a good cohort of people there. So thanks for joining. In terms of what we're going to talk about today, and I guess the purpose and the objectives is we're going to give you an overview of what a manifest is, when they're legally required, and what needs to be in them. We'll talk about pretty typical compliance gaps and some of the mistakes that we kind of see when we're out doing consulting work. We're going to have a discussion about how to align your manifests with emergency response expectations. And we're going to talk about some practical tools and tips to help you keep your manifest up to date. And at the end, I will do a quick demo of DGXprt to show you how it works. But it's very much going to be a conversation between myself and Renton. So yeah, so I think as we're going along, if there's natural questions you would like to ask, feel free to put it into the Q&A box. And who have we really designed this for? Well, in reality, it's anyone that is storing dangerous goods and hazardous chemicals that could be at a manifest quantity. But, typically the people that are responsible in this area is the workplace health and safety managers. It could be your dangerous goods or compliance teams. It might be the operational leads at business, or it could be the warehouse managers, just to name a few. But really any PCBUs with hazardous chemicals and dangerous goods on site when you're getting up towards those manifest quantities. And we'll discuss across today what that actually means in real terms. And so one of the first things is the reality check of, if your manifest wouldn't help a firefighter at 2 a.m., it's not fit for purpose. And so maybe Renton, pretty alarming quote, but maybe I'll throw that over to you. It's a good place to start talking about like who are manifests really for, I guess is probably a good place to start.
Yeah, so I mean, the main sort of purpose of the manifest, which is tied to a notification from various regulations in each of the states, is such that if there is an incident at your site, when the emergency responders are coming to the site, they can actually access the notification, the manifest, and the site layout, so they can start learning about your site while they're on the way to the site and give themselves some foreknowledge around what they might be expecting when they get to the site. So when you're thinking as a business of how or why you should be putting together the manifest or querying why some of the information that goes into the manifest is there, it's from that perspective of trying to educate the first responders responding to an incident at your site.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good overview. And I think, some of the problems that we see with the manifests are often they kind of get just treated as part of the compliance process just to produce a manifest. And, they're done once for like an audit or an inspection and then they're never updated. So as, the situation changes on site, the manifest doesn't really reflect. And as Renton was just saying, it's designed for emergency services. So if it's not up to date and they're turning up at your business at 2 o'clock in the morning for a fire, then you want them to have all the information at hand to be able to fight that fire successfully and obviously keep everyone safe in the process.
Yeah, I
Um,
think to expand on that, it's a living document. So like your businesses
yeah,
don't remain static; they're constantly changing. They're morphing around the edges. They might be very similar in practice from day to day, but there's bits that fluctuate. The manifest is designed to, or should be designed to, capture that and be updating to keep an accurate record of what is present for that purpose
yeah,
of information for the emergency responders.
yeah, 100%. The next kind of topic, I guess, Renton, was to talk about like the differences between a register and a manifest. And I think sometimes we see that these things get confused. So, when you need a hazardous chemical register, and when you need a manifest, right? And so maybe a good thing to kind of talk about, Renton, is what each of them are really designed for. And maybe we could talk about the register first as, to kind of set the baseline a bit.
Yeah. So the way I like to interpret is the register is more so for on-site personnel. It's to understand what
Yeah.
you have and link it to your safety data sheets and then also your risk assessment. So it's very much managing risk for on-site personnel and giving them the knowledge necessary to do their day-to-day jobs in a safe manner. Whereas the manifest is very much for the external emergency responders. Um, yeah, from a day-to-day perspective, the on-site personnel shouldn't really need to be interacting with the manifest. The register should be doing that. The manifest is more so for, yeah, if you have an incident and external parties are coming to the site.
Yeah, and we will come and have a look at what actually needs to be in a manifest. But just printing out your hazardous chemical or dangerous goods register, depending on what state you're in, depends on the terminology that you use, and then just sticking that in your hazmat box at the front isn't going to cut it as a manifest, right? And so I think they're sort of, as Renton was saying, they're designed for two different audiences, and so it's important to understand the difference between the two. Um, and then I think this slide here, I guess the point that we're making here is sort of knowing when a manifest is required. And then so storage and handling regulations across Australia are state-based. And like a number of the states use the model WHS laws. And so you're looking in Schedule 11 there. And then we've got Victoria's got its own standalone dangerous goods laws. So in there, you're looking at Schedule 2, and then South Australia and Western Australia have a bit of a hybrid as well. So while there is some commonality between some states, and we'll get in and have a look at what involves, determining what your storage threshold is, I guess the point that we're making here, Renton, is that, you're, determining if you have a manifest quantity is really dependent on the jurisdiction that the site is located in, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, and especially if you're operating across multiple sites, multiple states, it's good to have an understanding of what is actually triggering your notification and manifest. The
Yeah.
thresholds are quite similar across the states, but yeah, so there are some nuances between the states because the regulations have been updated depending on the state. For example, New South Wales is a 2025 version, whereas Queensland is still operating with the original model 2011 version.
Correct. And so there is a level of complexity there and being able to understand that, right? So, but I think it's important to understand, as we were just saying, one, you're doing a calculation to determine if you're a manifest quantity or not is going to be dependent on the jurisdiction you're in. And if you're a business with operating in multiple states, then you need to be conscious of the different jurisdictions. It's not guaranteed that they're all going to be the same. And it's something to understand. So there is a degree of complexity there. And then so I think that then takes us into working out what your storage threshold is. So I think all of the storage and handling regulations all work on the basic principle, that depending on the type and the amount of hazardous chemicals or dangerous goods that you have on site is really going to drive what your compliance obligations are. So you start at really a minor quantities, if you have any amount. You then get to a placarding quantity, which you've got to obviously put placards and signage up around the site. And then when you get to a manifest quantity, then that's when you need to have the manifest. Typically, you need to report to the regulator, submit your emergency plan to emergency services, and a range of other things, depending on the state that you're in. But if you kind of take a step back from that, and so, what would be the logical process that you would go through to do it is really the first thing is, know what chemicals that you have on site, right? And so it's knowing what you have. You would typically do that through the safety data sheets, and then you would need to know the amount that you have that you pull out of your inventory management system or your warehouse management system, right? So sort of knowing what chemicals you have on site is kind of the first step. The next step then is to understand what the classification is. So in Victoria, we use the dangerous goods classes for storage and handling as per the Australian Dangerous Goods Code. In other states where you're using the workplace health and safety regulations, that you're using the GHS classification. So it's kind of understanding that. And then you're really looking at calculating the quantities by type, grouping them together, understanding once you aggregate that data up, what you've got, and then checking your relevant state schedule to see where you sit on there, if you're a minor quantity, placarding, manifest, or in Victoria also have the concept of fire protection. And then that's really going to drive what your compliance obligations are based on what state you're in. So there's a systematic process to go through. And I think the point that we're trying to make here is before you dive in and, say, hey, we need to create a manifest and have like a hazmat or an emergency information container at the front of our building, first thing you need to determine is, well, do you even meet the criteria to be a manifest site? And so I don't know, Brenton, if there's anything that you would want to kind of add to that process and sort of some of the challenges around that.
Yeah, I think more so for our attendees that are from the sort of warehousing businesses. Typically,
Yep.
the inventory management is based off like pallets, boxes, cartons, things like that. However, the regulations are kilograms and liters. So you need to convert your DG classes back into either a kilogram or liter to assess it against the thresholds.
Yep. 100%. So yeah, so I think that that's sort of like a fundamental step is to work out, do you actually need to even generate a manifest in the first place? So that's a logical step. And then the next parts that we were going to talk about is really to what is actually in a manifest, right? So we've taken the template from Safe Work Australia, which is based on the workplace health and safety regulations. And we just wanted to step you through at a high level, what information needs to be in a manifest. Just remembering that, the intended audience is emergency services. So this is what the emergency services people are interested in. And so obviously on the first bit in general information, name of the company, address, and importantly, when was the date, the last time that the manifest was updated, or when was it prepared? And then you need to have 2 emergency contacts on there. And obviously you need to have their after hours numbers and keeping that up to date, right? Like, because people change roles all the time, or that may not be the area of really responsibility, but having that number there. So, in the example, the emergency services get called to site at 2 a.m, that the numbers that they're calling there, that they can actually get access to people that have knowledge of the site. Ideally, the manifest has got the site plan and all the required information in it, but being able to speak to people that know the site intimately is important. Anything to kind of add to that one, Renton? It's pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. But yeah, the emergency contacts obviously very helpful when it comes to sites that have more complexity. Say you've got a process that might need to be isolated.
Yep.
Yeah, just things like that where you can provide some input to the responders and reduce the risk that they may be walking into by providing some knowledge.
Absolutely. And then maybe Renton, you can talk to this one as well. So the kind of the first section of the manifest is it talks about package stores. So what do package stores really mean? What does this mean in plain
Yeah,
English?
so
Yeah.
so package stores, well, under the ADG code, there is a definition for what a package is, which is up
Yeah.
to 500 kilograms or liters. For DG storage itself, that definition can include IBCs up to 1.6 meters cubed, but
Yeah.
essentially it's something that's in a container that is quite portable. Um,
Yeah.
and that is what would be in a package store. Uh, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not much more to it.
I
It's
think
defined
that's
by
it
the
in a
limits.
nutshell. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's kind of it in a nutshell. You can also see here in this sample here is that it's sort of talking about the area as well. And we'll go and have a look at a site plan at the end. But, one of the key things in the site plan is to be able to identify, well, where are these dangerous goods actually located on the site? That is an important piece of information that sometimes gets overlooked, right? So, but yeah.
Yeah, it's important to have a unique identifier just for traceability so you can
Yep.
marry up the manifest to the site layout.
Yep. Good. And then the next sections are bulk and in tanks. And so why are emergency services interested in these sections, Renton?
Yeah, so bulk refers to you're obviously having a larger risk because you've got a bigger package volume. So if you have a failure of it, your consequence is likely to be more significant than for our packages. So that's why they're sort of separated out. And then tanks represent a different risk profile as well. And
Yeah.
that is essentially the intent, just to segment off things that are going to present a significant risk to the emergency responders.
Yeah. 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 And so it's the larger quantities concentrated in one area, right? And so it's a bigger risk profile and a different risk profile as opposed to the package stores that we were talking about earlier. So that's why it's important that these things are in their separate sections. And then a couple of other areas in the manifest is, so there's an area to put in things if there's a manufacturing area. So if there's things going on site, like it could be, decanting or distilling or a range of things that might be happening in a particular manufacturing area where you've got raw materials that are dangerous goods or hazardous chemicals. This is the section where you're putting this in. Anything else to kind of say about manufacturing areas or any other things to consider here, Renton?
Not particularly. Again, it's just segmenting the different risk profiles for the emergency responders.
Yeah. And then in terms of sections, another one is things that you've got that are considered to be in transit. So in transit means that, it's in that location for less than 5 days, and you're not opening it up and doing things with it. It's truly an in transit area. So, companies that are, warehouses, third-party logistics providers and stuff like that would have a lot of stuff in transit. And so this is where you would kind of capture that. And ideally, you would show on your site plan, you'd have a designated area that this is where are in transit area. So then emergency services could look at it and go, well, I can see that's where the in transit zone is. And we can see that, in this particular case, they've got 2.2 non-flammable, non-toxic gases, and there's 500 litres there on average of krypton in that particular area.
I think to add to that, to just clarify transit, normally it's going to be products that have a consignment details on them already. So they are
Yes.
clearly in transit. They're not just goods that are sitting there with no destination. It's not storage. Like they have been put in a location and have documentation to have them in transit to a location.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And then the last piece in the puzzle is to have a site plan where you've got, and so there's a range of key elements on there, and I think we'll talk about this a bit more, but basically it's important, obviously, having a site plan, and you can see in this particular case, they've got examples of, they've got a package store, and you can see this is PS3s where they've got the class 3, PS4s where they've got the class 8. So it's clear to emergency services about where the dangerous goods are located on site. And so there's some other elements in a site plan that I think we'll come and talk to. But I think it's fair to say as well, Renton, in general, we kind of see that this is an area that people struggle with to do this well, right? And yeah, I think it's one part that people I consistently see is not done well.
Yeah, at some of the AIDGC conferences we've had, SafeWork have done some presentations around site layouts that do not comply with the regulation. So I think it's something that they
Yeah,
see quite frequently as well.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So I think, just really to summarize, they're all the key elements of the manifest, right? So, you've got the general information, which includes the emergency contacts, the last time it was updated, the package store areas, the bulk storage and tanks, chemicals being manufacturers. So if you've got manufacturing areas in transit, and then the last bit is really the site plan. So they're all the elements that you would need in your manifest. And then I think this is the bit about site plans. Um, any kind of key call outs here, Renton? I mean, people can see the information on the slide, but from your experience, and I know the team at Riskcon there are doing site plans all the time. So what are the things that you guys make sure that you get right, or what are the main things you look for?
Well, so yeah, all those things are taken from the regulation. So or they
Yeah,
need to be on the site layout. But
yeah,
again, you're thinking from the perspective of what does the emergency responder need to know? And when you
yeah,
think of it from that perspective, it makes a lot of sense why these things are there. You need true north so that you can understand the orientation. You've got the street names to help them orientate it. You've got the nature of joining sites so they can then cross-reference that if they're there. For drains, you need to know where, like, they need to know where the drains are so they can stop off-site releases if there's contaminated water or spills. Electrical mains for isolation, hydrants for them to actually combat the incidents. It all provides valuable information for them to understand the site.
yeah, yeah, completely. I can see, Renton, we've got a question in the Q&A as well from William, just basically saying to us that DG Class 9 lithium batteries are not covered under the Workplace Regulation Schedule 11, and so that is correct, William. And so anything to add to that, Renton? Yeah,
Yep. So for the most part, most states don't have anything for class nine, well, in particular lithium batteries, which present a very topical hazard these days. The New South Wales regulation has recently been updated to add in a segment for lithium ion batteries for 25,000 kilograms. And then that requires an emergency response plan, but it doesn't necessarily show up in the requirement to notify SafeWork or WorkSafe
yeah,
and do the manifest and site layout.
yeah, yeah. And so I think it's a good point, William, and I think Renton and I would both agree that it's a gap that, currently exists in the regulation. So in Victoria, it gets picked up. Because Class 9 is in Schedule 2 in Victoria, but I think in the other states where they're using the workplace health and safety regulations, you are right that that's a gap today, and it's a bit of an issue. So yeah,
Yeah, you're only going to get caught in the other states by the sort of catch-all clause in 3.1, which just requires the risks to be assessed and minimized accordingly.
correct,
Um, so yeah,
correct.
it's nothing that's specifically spelling out and directing you to look at the batteries and providing
Yeah,
thresholds to guide you.
yeah. And so I think it's a good point. We're not going to solve it on the webinar today. So yeah, but it's a gap for sure. Thanks, William. Good question. Okay, so that's site plans at a high level. And I think the other things, what we want to move on to now is kind of share some of the things that we have seen where there's been issues when it comes to managing your manifest. And I think we've already kind of touched on a few of these, but if you do have a manifest quantity, there's a range of requirements that you need to meet. One of them is that you need to have a hazmat or an emergency information box at the site entrance. And your manifest, the actual document, needs to be inside of that. So not having that is a problem. We've talked about site plan. So if you have a site plan in there, but it's not up to date or too hard to read or has got issues, that's not great. Not having the storage locations of where the dangerous goods are actually located on site as well, which I guess ultimately really relates to the site plan. If the actual manifest itself, where it's located, is not easy to get to, or you can't see it because there's trees growing over the top of it or something like that, is another issue. And then we already kind of touched on being clear the difference between a register and a manifest. So they were kind of our, top five things that we see people get wrong. Renton, any other comments or things to add about that?
Not particularly. That kind of covers off everything.
Yeah, I think they're the main ones, right? Um, and then, interestingly, maybe Renton, I'll get your thoughts on this. I mean, I think one of the things that we've seen is the single person risk, and I think the dynamic in the workplace is changing where people don't stay at one job for 20 years anymore, and the turnover of staff is more, and the level of knowledge about dangerous goods potentially isn't as high as it was previously, mate, and that could be for a bunch of reasons. But I mean, I guess what's your take on what you see in industry with this, what we've called here the single person risk?
Yeah, I mean, regularly we will have done work for clients, and then 5 years later, you have someone new from that same client asking you to do something that has been done in the past. And then you
Yes.
direct them back to the documentation that has been previously prepared, and then it might need an update, but they're going in asking for it to be developed from scratch because they don't know it exists. So yeah, you
Yes.
very much have this typical one person risk where they leave, and then the knowledge accumulated by that previous person is not passed on or forgotten, and then creates this gap in compliance.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's having a process in place, and sort of I think it's also ensuring that like the dangerous goods compliance isn't like an afterthought, and it's not like a once-off project that you do. So, looking to get compliant is just really a start. And then, the ongoing maintenance of that is important, right? And so, and having access to that information. Um, and also, I think the other thing is kind of to make that dangerous goods compliance part of operation rather than an additional thing, because it's sort of inherent in health and safety, right? To make it part of your normal operations um, rather than it something that you do at the end, right? As an additional thing.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing you want is a regulator to attend your site, request some documentation, whether it's a manifest or a register, and then for
Yep.
your response to be, "What's that?"
Yes, exactly. Um, And then what we've got up here, Renton, and you made the point earlier, is that a manifest is a living document. So maybe you could kind of give your thoughts on this, or some examples about what types of things are needing to get changed in a manifest and why you would need to keep it up to date.
Yeah, so typically a manifest has a maximum quantity and an average. So the average is meant to sort of, I guess, adjust with your day-to-day operations, but the maximum should be either like what you're approved for or what it's designed to be stored.
Yep.
So yeah, if your maximum changes, then that also needs to be updated in your manifest. But typically, you can just have to update your average. Similar thing with the site layout. If you have storages that are moving or are getting relocated, or you're adding new ones, that needs to be captured. Uh, Another thing with emergency response roles, if someone leaves the business, that needs to be tracked, and a new person needs to be allocated as the emergency response contact with their details. Or if the
Yep.
business is sold, you got to update the PCBU details. Yeah, the rest of it also just very, very much, if something changes, just update your manifest. Have it
Yep.
scheduled to at least review it formally once a year. So at least and then
Yep.
if you're not doing it on a day-to-day basis, it's getting captured at least once a year. But ideally,
Yes.
you're on top of it regularly.
Yep. No, I think that's good. Um, Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Brenton. And then I think the last of the sort of like the talking points before I jump in and do a demo, um, is really sort of some practical tips from us about, helping things work or make it work going forward. And so I guess these would be some practical tips, and feel free for people in the Q&A to add your own thoughts as well. I'm happy to read those out. But yeah, I think one of the first things is really to have a good handle on your safety data sheets, and ensure that they're accurate and compliant safety data sheets to start off with. We see a lot of safety data sheets out there that are not great. So making sure you've got a good base information, because the SDS is really like the foundation for all of your hazardous chemical and dangerous goods information, it all kind of starts there. And so if you don't have a good starting point, it can make other parts in the process not work well. So I think starting with a good SDS is important. Renton, what would be one from you? It doesn't have to be one that's on the slide there, but it
Engaging
can.
fire services is always a good one. I've heard
Yeah.
of clients organizing a barbecue that tends to get a lot of the firefighters to actually attend the site.
Yeah.
Gives you an
Yes.
opportunity to talk to them and walk them around the site and show them the DGs so that they have,
Yeah.
some real life experience. If they have to attend your site, they have hopefully have some familiarity.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. And I think as well, like the experience with like emergency services and the fireys is that, they do want to help, right? And so by them coming out and, giving you some advice, and if you did get to the point where there's a fire, if they've been out there previously, then they know what they're coming into, right? So it's a good thing. The other thing, so assign ownership. So I think, we kind of touched on that before, but, it's got to be part of a process, not reliant on a single person. So keeping the manifest up to date is part of a process rather than one person's responsibility. So I can see that William has wrote another good comment in the Q&A there where he said obligations exist to update the regulators with significant changes to the manifest, and periodically businesses also need to monitor max quantities and dangerous goods continuously. So yeah, 100% is having that. And then yeah, linking the manifest to inventory control so you know when amounts coming in, if you're going to tip over into another storage threshold's important. And sort of that brings it into making it all part of a system. And yeah, any other ones there to kind of, I mean, people can see what's on the screen there, but Renton, any other sort of value adds from you on sort of practical advice on making it work?
Yeah, I think just having more than one person at the site be aware of the documents so that,
Yeah,
not just having one person who is managing and then leaving and then it's all forgotten. At least that way, then, there's some redundancy if you lose a person to another
yeah,
business or they retire.
yeah, yeah, no, good. So super high level, there are tips. I'm sure that I can see by the names that we have on the webinar, there's some super experienced people on the call here today as well. So yeah, if you have anything to add, feel free to stick it in the chat there. So I think in terms of the talking points with me and Renton, they were kind of the main things that we were going to go over. So hopefully that will, give you some information and some knowledge that you may or may not have been aware of before. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through a quick, and when I say quick, this is going to be like less than 10 minutes. I'm going to show you a demo of how you would create a manifest in DGXprt. And so I think, and let me get that up on the screen. And let me log in. Right. So, Renton, can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
You got it? Good. Right. So we're logged into DGXprt. This is my demo system. So I've got quite a lot of data in here, and I'm not going to do a demo of the whole system, but I'll just kind of explain some key concepts to you. So I can see in here that I've got 1,175 SDSs in the system. I can see of the ones that I've got in here, 264 are already expired. And then I can also see that 454 are considered poor quality. So when we bring the SDSs into the system, we run them through a quality algorithm against what the relevant Australian regulations are to determine if they're compliant or not. I can also see for all of the sites that I have in here, I can see straight away what each of those sites are in terms of the site classification. And we can see we've got sites in the various states. And so the system is jurisdiction aware. So it knows that the regulations for storage and handling in each of the states are different. And if I was going to go and have a look at this particular example that I'll use for the warehouse, DGT warehouse. So if I wanted to go and have a look at that particular site, I could look at their threshold calculator. And so this is where all the data has been aggregated up. I can see that it's a fire protection quantity. These are all of the dangerous goods that we have on site. And then it's showing me this is Schedule 2 from the Vic regulations where we've done all the calculations. And we can see that what's making this site fire protection is it's the amount that we've got of Class 3 packing group 3. We've got 65,000 litres and 20,000 makes it fire protection. And you can see the mixed classes also push it over and a range of other things. So that's just sort of super briefly the being able to see this storage threshold calculator is critical. And then the other thing that I'll just kind of quickly show you as well before we go and jump into the manifest is show you the compliance obligations. So what we're doing here is we're taking the, in this case, it's Victoria. If we're in New South Wales, it would have New South Wales, WA would have WA. And so it's showing us in plain English what the compliance obligations are. So these are the regulation numbers down the left here. And here we've kind of grouped them into logical areas and given you plain English explanations about what you need to do. There's links over to various things. So this one about safety data sheets, it tells you what your safety data sheets need to do. And then there's a link over to Safe Work Australia Code of Practice where you can go and have a look. So these are all the things that you would need to do if you had any amount of dangerous goods in Victoria. This is where the placarding requirements come in. This is if you're storing dangerous goods at a manifest quantity, as we've been talking about, that we would also need to notify WorkSafe Victoria, and we'll give you a link to the website for WorkSafe Victoria to go and do the notification that you've got a manifest quantity. And then if you had a fire protection quantity in Victoria, it tells you what you need to do. So that's a super high level, does a lot of other things to help you with dangerous goods compliance, but that's a super high level where to go. Then we've got a manifest module that allows you to automatically produce a manifest in a compliant manner. And so I've already, in the interest of being able to do the demo in a timely manner today, I've gone and sort of entered in some of the information quickly, but basically the system knows what dangerous goods and hazardous chemicals you already have on site because we're importing that. We're extracting it out of your safety data sheets. We're also pulling in data from your warehouse management or your inventory management system and matching all of that data up in the system. So the system already knows what dangerous goods you have on site. So in here, if you're creating a manifest, you would choose which site. So I've chosen this DGT warehouse. You can put in a business name, trading name. You need to put in 2 after hours emergency contacts. So that bit's quite straightforward. When we then get to the package stores, the system knows based on the size of the packages that we've got, it's telling me here already, you know, based on the data in the site inventory, package stores do apply to DGT warehouse. So, and you literally just follow these breadcrumbs across the top. And so it tells me these are all the dangerous goods that you've got that meet the criteria of being a package store. And if I looked in one of them, if I looked at paint, this particular one, I can see that I've currently got 600 litres. I could go and see it in the site inventory. Average quantity is 600 litres. The maximum would be 1,000. And you can see that it's assigned to this storage ID of PS3. I'm not going to update that now, but you could quickly go through and update that. So once that's set up once, you don't need to do it again. But all of these dangerous goods, you don't have to manually go and add them. It's automatically populated based on the site that you're at. So these would be all of your package stores goods. When we get to bulk storage, once again, it can sort of look at the size and the amount that you've got of a particular dangerous good. So here it's telling us for this UN2880 calcium hypochlorite, it's saying that this is its bulk. And if I looked at this particular one, I can see that it's stored in this BLK1 center roof store, and there's 3,000. The design capacity is 5,000 kilos. So it can tell us bulk storage. Also, the system knows if you've got tanks. And so here we've got a tank of ethanol that has an average quantity of 7,000 litre. The maximum quantity is 10,000. The diameter is 5 for that particular tank. And so it's saying to me here again, automatically it knows based on the data in your site inventory, tanks do apply to the DGT warehouse. In transit, I've just answered no to this. I could say yes, and it would make me go and put in what dangerous goods I have in transit, but I've said no. And I skipped over the manufacturing area. So in this particular example, we're saying that we've got a manufacturing area where we've got adhesives and we've got hydrogen peroxide in there. So we've gone and put in the amounts for that. In transit, we're saying no, we don't. And then importantly, we've got a site plan in here. And so the system can read your site plan and tell you if it's compliant or not. And so if I was to replace this, and I'll just show you how this works. Let me find the right thing. Demo data. Yeah, so if I just drag that site plan in again, basically using AI, it reads the plan. All of these things on the right here are criteria taken from the regulations. And so we can see here that it's saying, well, you don't have a bulk area called BLK1, you don't have a tank area, your scale is not on there, your site name and address, and your date of plan is not on there. If I had another example of a plan, so let me try another one as an example. So I've got another example of the site plan here. People in Victoria will know this plan. It will look familiar because it's an example that we've taken from the code of practice. And so you can see that this has ticked a lot more of the areas. And so this one, it does have a scale, it does have the site name and address and a range of other things, right? So it'll check the site plan for you. And then the last part of the process is that the system automatically generates a PDF for you of your manifest. And so if I go and zoom in on this, so you can see that this meets the compliant format. So all of the information that's been automatically extracted out of the system is in this PDF here. So where you can see, sorry for scrolling, but the address, who are the emergency contacts, what dangerous goods you have in bulk, what's in tanks. Here in particular, it's talking about package store 1, class 2.3 or packing group 1, package store 2. So these are all of the other packaged dangerous goods, manufacturing areas, transit, and then I haven't approved it here, but I'll show you that process. So we could also say, like, I'm approving it, I'm David, and let's just say I'm the CEO, right? And I could save that and say that that's approved. So as you can see there, the process of generating that manifest is pretty quick. And once you've done that once, if things changed, the system will know if the quantity's changed, and you would just come in here and regenerate a new manifest, and you wouldn't have to go through the whole process again. So I think at a high level, that was pretty much everything that I wanted to show you about the manifest. And the functionality in DGXprt. So as you can see, that kind of streamlines the process. If you've ever had to fill in a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet and do it manually and crunch all those numbers, you will know how painful that is. And so being able to do it here in the software, it's like the first time you do it, depends on how complicated your site is, but worst case scenario, it's a 10 to 15 minute exercise. And if it's a pretty straightforward site, you're doing it in less than 5 minutes. And once it's done, then you can approve it, print out the PDF, and then put it in your emergency information box at the front of your building. So yeah, that was pretty much. Renton, anything else about the manifest in the system I should talk about?
No, I think we've touched on everything. And yeah, I mean, the DGX expert platform makes it look very easy.
Yeah, no, good. Okay, so that's I think that's pretty much everything that we were going to show you today. I think if you've got additional questions, go for it. Happy to answer those. And then I think in terms of if you want additional information afterwards, that you can, and I'll just get this up in full mode. So if you've got questions afterwards, feel free to contact us, info at DGXprt.com. You can also connect to Renton and I on LinkedIn. If you want to scan that QR code, we've got a quarterly newsletter that we send out. And I'm just going to plug as well a podcast that we've just put out as well. So we're doing a podcast on behalf of the Australasian Institute of Dangerous Goods Consultants. And so the first edition of that podcast is going to be coming out tomorrow. And in that, I interview Matt Arkell from the National Transport Commission, talking about the latest version of the ADG code coming out next year, and it's a major rewrite as well. So if you kind of enjoyed this topic about manifests, I'm sure that the upcoming changes to the ADG code would be of interest to you as well. So Renton, we've got another question in there. The question is, does the transit quantity count when screening site quantity against applicable storage thresholds? Do you know the answer to that one off the top of your head?
What storage thresholds are you looking at is the question.
I'm assuming that he means like the state-based one. So, like Schedule 11, I'm assuming is what he's asking.
Yeah, so if you're looking at your site, say you have a storage area of 1,000, and then you've got a transit area of 200, then against your overall threshold, you've got 1,200
Yeah.
of, I guess, like area that you can store.
Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question. And if you want more clarity, just feel free to send it to me on LinkedIn or just drop me an email. My email address is also david@DGXprt. So hopefully that answers your question. So appreciate everyone making the time to come today. Renton, thanks for your time as well. Feel like it was a good discussion. And yeah, if you've got additional questions, please feel free to get in touch. And we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.